Happy Monday, everybody. This is Keylime here with another weekly preview. I'm going to be covering the PC, mobile, Xbox, PS4 side of things first. We do have some interesting, weird stuff going on this week. Probably first of note would be that the new offer calendar is here. So you can see that it's Shark Week. Hooray, Shark Week. So this is the first time that we're seeing this thing. This is basically we're getting a unique offer every single day of the week. Fortunately, this last one is free, so we can see what that ends up looking like. But initially here, we're just getting this one. Unfortunately, it won't let you look ahead, so we won't necessarily know what's coming. However, this is the first time it's in the game. This is pretty interesting. I think we'll learn something from this. But be sure to check this out. At a minimum, make sure you check back on the 4th of August. You'll be able to grab something for free. But we'll see how this ends up looking. So that's kind of cool. Beyond all of that, in event keys this time around, we have the Wild Plains. Who you might get in here, since I need them. I'll talk about the new troop in a second. But who you might be snagging out of here would be someone like Ketris. So Ketris is new, for me at least, in the event keys. So if you are opening event keys this time around, the kingdom is Wild Plains. And what's interesting about Wild Plains is that they actually did get a rework, which is kind of interesting. So all of these troops are going to be changed. Unfortunately, as of the time that I'm recording this video, it's not yet changed. However, all of these troops are getting minor buffs kind of throughout. But however, if you don't have Ketris, absolutely make sure that you pick him up. He's obviously pretty great. Tons of damage. So all of the damage that he's doing is being boosted by attack, life, and armor, and he's doing half of that to adjacent enemies, so he's smacking someone with some splash damage. This gets really crazy, and it's boosted by all of this attack, armor, and life, and he's gaining 2 every time you match red gems. So overall, Ketris is someone that can smack really hard, very useful in events. Maybe a little less useful in Guild Wars and PvP scenarios. However, you can really abuse this like pumping life thing, especially if you have a weapon like Yasmin's Pride, for instance, which is just giving him tons of life. So Ketris obviously a very high value get. Chief Stronghorn is also kind of interesting. All these other troops are not necessarily worth chasing with event keys. They all have their own weird little quirks, but I wouldn't really go out of my way chasing them with event keys. As far as the rework goes that I just mentioned, so if we look at what's actually going on in here, basically all of the traits and spell abilities got these minor tweaks. I'd probably say the most of note that we should talk about would be Soothsayer got a weird little buff, so this is the one that starts empowered. Basically it's going to destroy a column in a row. However, now it's also giving +1 to all allies in terms of stats, so that's kind of okay. I've always found Soothsayer kind of awkward to use. So I wouldn't necessarily call this magically making them awesome, but worth noting. Gorgon also got a weird change, so now it's going to explode a row. So this troop has a little more value. It's also knocking the first enemy to the back. So this has a little more value. So Gorgon might be someone you'd want to check in on again. Skeleros is probably the weirder one that just got updated. So normally he was doubling the number of skulls on the board. Now it's doubling the number of skulls on the board and then creating 2 more skulls. They tried to make this say that it's behaving similarly to troll troops. They were usually doubling and then creating 3 more. This is doubling and then creating 2 more, unless that's just like a typo on the website. And his spell cost was reduced down to 12. So that's kind of interesting. So if you are running some kind of skull-heavy lineup, Skeleros is someone that could potentially be interesting. Everybody else is pretty much the same. But for this troop, that's kind of interesting. Since he is Tauros, if you were running this with the Shaman class, for instance, he would get 50% mana start. So this troop has some potential. I think we need to double click in on him a little bit later. But that's what's in the event keys this time around. As far as what the actual event is, so it is Guild Wars week, so make sure you jump in here, set your sentinels, upgrade all of these, make sure you get all your defenses set, and then get ready to attack tomorrow. So on Tuesday, your first day is going to be Yellow Day. So definitely make sure you jump in there and do all of your prep as far as Guild Wars is concerned today, because tomorrow is when all the fun stuff starts. As far as Glory Troops goes, so the Glory Troop that we got this time around is Banejaw. I'm actually like extremely torn on what the heck I think about this guy. Well, I'm not really torn, I know what I think about him. I don't like this at all, actually. So his deal is that he's doing 25 damage to somebody that you're targeting, but then he has a 50% chance to hit the wrong enemy. So this is an intentional failure built into the spell, and then if the enemy is using purple, it'll do triple, and if they die, it creates 8 skulls. So this spell effect is actually very cool. Like if, this was just hitting whoever you wanted, this would be pretty cool troop. But since it has this 50% to hit the wrong enemy thing, it's kind of a complete waste. The only time you would ever really run this is if you... I don't know if I would really run this kind of ever anyways, just because it doesn't have any loot potential. The damage that it's doing is okay. 25 to someone. If we get this guy to Mythic, for instance, I'm not going to get him that high. It's not working the way I would expect. So, but if we get this guy to Mythic, this would be doing a little more damage than this, but doing triple is only going to be doing roughly 100-ish. So doing 100 damage in one shot, that's obviously pretty cool. It's a Wargear troop, which is also kind of note. So Wulfgarok is somebody that would get some benefit from this troop being in the lineup. But since it has no loot potential, I find it kind of useless. I can't see myself ever building around this unless I absolutely know that the other team is only going to be using purple. So Guild Wars Purple Defense Day, you might argue that this troop has some benefit because it doesn't matter who he hits, it's always going to be somebody purple. But it's still kind of super awkward. That's the only use case where I could ever see you running this, because you have no idea if the other team's going to be using purple all the time or not. I'm not going to be scouting every single fight, even if you get them for free, and then seeing, okay, are they using all purple? Okay, I'm going to use this guy. This guy isn't strong enough to warrant that kind of play. So admittedly, I don't really like this at all. He does do double damage versus purple enemies as well. So again, it's kind of this is a super purple defense day only kind of troop. So I don't necessarily know who you'd even want to try and put together with this. Again, it's a Wargear, so it would imply Wulfgarok would be someone you'd want to be using with him. But beyond all of that, nothing all that crazy. So not a big fan, but you do get 2 Arcane Skulls, so go ahead and jump in there and get your Glory Troop up. That's always a good time. As far as other things that we're getting this time around, so we have a bounty event on Friday. So on Friday, it's the same type of deal. So I think it'll even give me the little preview. Yeah, so there's a bounty event on Friday. So bounty event again is where you get a new siege captain. You get all these bounty troops to use in your lineup, and then you kind of smack things down. The new bounty troop that we're getting this time around is called Ridgeback. He's actually a pretty good one. So he's knocking the first enemy to the back, and then he's exploding. So exploding is obviously very nice. So this dude's going to be a mana generator, someone that you could pretty easily put in a lot of lineups. Again, of note, make sure that you get at least the first trait, so that way you're getting the bounty bonus when you're using them on Friday. I would recommend trying to get this up to Mythic so you can get that 6x bounty score. However, using the Siege Captain, which this troop will be on Friday, will get you double the bonus. So if you get this up to Mythic, you'll be getting the 6x bonus as you normally do, but since it's the Siege Captain, you'll be getting a 12x just for using this troop. So make sure you jump in, throw this troop in your lineup. He's actually pretty decent. He does get some skull reduction, which is also pretty cool. So that's neato. Actually, kind of also of note is that he's dealing 1 damage to all enemies when you match skulls. So what's kind of cool about this is if the other team is running barriers or something like that, if you do any kind of skull damage, it'll pop all the barriers. That's the only real utility I see of this. So overall, he's actually a kind of cool troop. I'm not sure if I'd ever use him outside of a bounty event, but the fact that he has some decent utility as a bounty troop is actually pretty cool. So bounty event this week on Friday should be pretty fun. Beyond all of that, we've got the Soul Forge going on. So in the Soul Forge, we have some cool stuff. So if we jump in on the troop side of things, we've got Famine. So Famine's would be new to me, but he basically drains all the mana from all enemies. So obviously that's super annoying, of course. But then he's also dealing 6 damage boosted by all of that mana that was just drained, times 2. So you can just imagine, right? Like if they had, let's just say 15 mana each. So 15, 15, 15, and 15. So that's 60 mana total. He's going to be doing 120 damage, plus 6 to the person that you hit. So like that nuke is super strong. Like when you blast somebody with Famine, like they're probably going to die if they had full mana in any capacity. He's not somebody that you want to shoot off on the first turn, of course, because the other team's going to have very low mana. But if the game's gone on for like 2 or 3 turns where they've had time to build up all their mana, hitting them with this is going to be super frustrating because they wasted all that time building mana in the first place. And then you're smacking them for a massive amount of damage as a result. So I'm personally looking forward to playing around with Famine. I think I have him rated as like a very high B tier. I've seen people place him in all over the place as far as tier lists go. I've seen him in the A tier, I've seen him in the C tier. But I think he's absolutely somebody that's worth messing around with. The only reason you might not be looking at this person, however, is because, of course, Infernus is in the Soulforge, which is what I've ranked as an S tier. I think is pretty universally agreed upon to be either an S or an A tier by just about everybody. And of course, it's because he's Infernus, so he's doing solid damage to 2 people, splash damage wise, and then he's also exploding the board, so he's got tons of damage potential, tons of loot potential. He's also doing this burning, so if you're running a class like a Warlord or a Sunspear or a Hierophant, even if you've been leveling your Hierophant, you do get access to Fireblade. Dragon Guard also gets this. So you'd be doing triple skull damage to burning enemies. So if you're running any of those classes, Infernus is an absolute must-have, so you can take advantage of their level 100 talent there. So Infernus is in there. That's really all that's of note. I wouldn't really say Phoenicia is worth a craft. So that's what's in there from that perspective. As far as the weapons, we do get Rage Reaver. So this was new to me and I picked it up because this is doing a decent amount of damage. So 30 splash damage is kind of noteworthy. It's at least hitting multiple people. So this will have some utility as far as breaking barriers and things like that. But it's also creating a decent amount of mana. So this is a 3 times boost. So if you're running a pure Tauros lineup, so a Wild Plains lineup more or less, you're creating a bunch of red gems. What's nice about creating a bunch of red gems is that Ketris the Bull actually takes red gems and you get stat pumped based on red gems. So if you are trying to run like a explicit Wild Plains kind of lineup, there could be some value in this weapon. So I picked it up. There's some value in this. Anytime you have mana generation like this that's got a decent boost on it, I think it's worth crafting. Obviously don't spend your resources if this is something that is pretty scarce for you. If you're trying to save up your diamonds, for instance, for mythics, you might not want to jump into here, but if you're kind of a collector or you're trying to make sure that you have all of the high utility weapons, I would argue this one is pretty good. It is very specific to only Tauros, so this isn't going to be something you can use all the time or anything like that. But I think it is worth picking up if you don't have it, especially if you have the resources to spare. The other one is Primalax. This is kind of your traditional like mixed weapon, so 6 green, 6 red based on each Wild Plains ally, and not 6 and 6, but a mix, so it's like 3 and 3. This is okay. Again, this is kind of one of those weapons where if you happen to have the resources and you don't have this weapon, you might want to pick this up. Even with the Wild Plains rework, I wouldn't really say that Wild Plains are all that strong, so I wouldn't really argue you should go out of your way to craft either of these. However, they are mana generation weapons, so again, from my perspective, they are worth having in your collection. But if you're saving for mythics, I would still argue you should go for those. But that is everything that's coming in on the PC side of things until actually this guy. So this guy is coming out on Friday. This is the new mythic, so please make sure you're saving your keys for this week. You want to be grabbing this guy. So what this dude's all about, who looks kind of ethereal or whatever here, he's another demon troop. He's devouring an ally, and then he's summoning a new demon, assuming you devour them. So I'm assuming this is implying that, like, if your own troop is devour immune, this isn't going to work. So that kind of makes sense, of course. But then he's dealing true scatter damage. So true damage, scatter damage, boosted by his life by a 3-to-1. So the way that you're going to be wanting to run this guy, assuming you get him, is that you want to be running him with somebody that's pumping up life a lot. So someone like a Holy Saint Astra, someone like a Divinia, anyone that's giving tons and tons of life is going to be what you want to be running. So you would prefer to be giving this to all. So if you were running Divinia, for instance, let's just say it was healing everybody 20 a pop. If you're healing everybody 20 a pop, that would be healing the ally that you're planning to devour and this guy. So when you do eat that new, when you eat your ally, you'll be boosting your life a lot, and then you'll also be boosted your life just because you're casting Divinia anyway. So if you're able to build up your own team's life a lot, like a Yasmin's Pride again would be another interesting option. Actually, Yasmin's Pride would make this troop super crazy. you would be able to then turn all of that life into true scatter damage. So this troop has a lot of weird abuse potential. I could see this being used in like events and delves, abusing like health mechanics to then just do some sick nuke to just destroy everybody on the other side. This is going to be an interesting troop. I don't really see a lot of value in this troop from a Guild Wars PvP perspective. I view this much more of like an event troop or a delving kind of troop, since you can abuse health gaining mechanics to try and do this like sick nuke thing. As far as its traits go, it has a little spell reduction, so that's okay. Being impervious to all status effects is obviously very nice, so I always dig that. And it also has this cursing a random enemy when you're matching Brown, so that's actually kind of cool. Curse again is what's making all of the debuffs that you've applied and stick on a little longer, and it's also allowing you to then do debuffs to troops that are impervious like himself. So for instance, if this guy got cursed, you could start to do status effects to him, so it makes him vulnerable to debuffs that he was normally immune to. So overall, this troop's kind of interesting. I'm going to get him, or I'm going to try and get him, of course. But again, I think he's going to be more used for his abuse of this health gaining mechanic in like higher level events and things like that. But we'll see if we can sneak him into PvP and Guild Wars. The mechanic is definitely something you can abuse, as I'm going to call it. But that is everything that's coming in on the PC side this week. On Switch side of things, we are also getting some fun stuff. So in the event keys for you guys this time around, you're getting the Pride Lands. So if we jump into the Pride Lands, and I don't overshoot the things that I'm sorting for, we go and see that the people that you get access to would be Ubestedt. So Ubestedt, if you don't have him, is pretty cool. Basically, if you are able to kill someone with his ability, he ultimately kills the other person for free. So basically, this is hitting the two weakest. So what you want to be doing with someone like Ubestedt is hitting them initially with something and then using Ubestedt to finish them off. So this is a very strong troop, especially earlier in the game when he was first released or when he was initially out there. He's obviously a very strong troop to have. He's Divine type, so if you have someone like a Divine Ishbala, for instance, you can get him with a 40% mana start, so that's also pretty useful. But the ability to just straight up kill somebody else is obviously very great. So from PvP Guild Wars perspective, this is pretty cool. Also in events, he does have some value because if you can potentially double kill with him. So overall, he's actually a very solid troop. I would strongly recommend you try and get him out of the event keys if at all possible. He's also giving all ally Raksha one attack and magic at the start of every turn. I personally don't find this all that strong. You also do get the benefit of summoning a Firestorm when an enemy dies, so this is exactly like Infernus, for instance. So overall, I think his spell ability is really great. His traits aren't necessarily all that cool. The Firestorm thing's pretty fun. Beyond all of that, there's Sekhma. Sekhma's pretty cool. So it's a mana converter, but he's also doing damage. She's also doing damage on top of it, and it's actually a pretty decent amount. So it's boosted by all ally magic by 2-to-1. So generally when you cast this troop, you're going to be doing something like 50 to 60 damage, I would say, from just a nuke. So it nukes somebody for that much damage, then it converts mana, then it also converts skulls. So overall, as far as skull converters go, this is actually one of the stronger ones in terms of like pure utility in terms of what it does. It's also cool because it's gaining 2 magic on red gems, so the ability to magic pump themselves is also very cool. So overall, I think Sekhma is actually one of the better skull converters that are out there. So feel free to try and snag them also out of event keys. Pretty darn cool. As far as the event that you guys have this time around, so it's an invasion. So for you guys, it'll be here, the invasion. So as far as the invasion, you guys are actually getting something extremely important. I'm going to start with this first, actually. So from a weapons perspective, you guys are getting access to Rope Dart. So hopefully you buy up to the tier that has the weapon, and this is mandatory as far as I'm concerned. You need to be getting this. So what this is doing is destroying all the enemy armor and then dealing 25 damage to them, at least in my instance. So you can view this as saying 25 true damage basically, but then it also pulls them up to the front. So already this is looking pretty cool, right? It's destroying all of the armor regardless of how much it is, and then doing a decent amount of damage and then pulling them up to the front. That sounds pretty cool. But this is where things get stupid. So if you look into what it actually can do when you upgrade it, so it entangles the first enemy. So that guy you just hit and pulled up to the front is now entangled. So that's obviously nuts. It's destroying 3 random red gems, which is kind of whatever. That's not terrible. But it also just gets an extra turn by default. So this weapon is insanely high value. If you've never gotten this weapon, used this weapon, seen this weapon before, I could understand how this might not seem all that interesting. But on the other platforms, we've had this weapon for a while, and it is absolutely devastating in a PvP and a Guild Wars scenario. So please make sure you pick this weapon up. It has some minor utility in the actual event itself. The towers aren't going to be able to be entangled or anything like that. But this weapon has so much value outside of events that it is an absolute must get. So please make sure you're jumping in and you're grabbing this weapon. Absolutely required. The teams that you're going to run into, the team that you're going to want to run basically when you get this weapon would look like this. Without Moonrabbit, this would be Mercy. For you guys, because I don't believe you have Moonrabbit yet. But this would basically be the team you want to run. Would be Divine Ishbala, some other Skull Converter besides Quillen, Rope Dart, and then Mercy. You basically just run this team in PvP and Guild Wars, and you'll just loop and loop and loop and loop and loop. Things get nuts. So enjoy Rope Dart when you get it. Absolutely amazing. Please do not skip it. I will be a sad man if you guys do not grab it. The invasion troop that you guys are getting this time around is Kartik the Climber. So they're okay. I mean, it's kind of a weird troop in the sense that it's doing damage to a tower, of course, boosted by your ascensions. So this part's pretty standard. But it's also decreasing the armor on all enemies by 10. So the one thing I'll just mention is that if you're running a Mang kind of lineup, you'd probably want to hit them with Mang first. Or if you're running Earth's Fury or Trickster Shot, since I know you guys got access to those as well, just make sure that you're hitting them with those things first. She's kind of like fighting your ability to do the most value out of those weapons, and she's decreasing armor. So Meng, of course, is getting boosted by armor destroyed. Same with Trickster's Shot, same with Earth's Fury. So if you're using Kartik like aggressively, you're going to hurt the amount of damage potential you'll be getting on your hero. Something to keep in mind. So this in theory is okay, but I think in practice with the weapons that you generally are running in these kinds of events, it kind of fights a little bit. So something to be aware of as you're doing it. She does gain stats if she's in the first slot. She gets a little skull dodge, and she also is dealing 3 to 5 times skull damage. So she absolutely is somebody you could be running in the first slot. In these events, of course, since once you get to the every single thing is a tower, you'll be able to do some skull damage with her on top of all that fun stuff. So, interesting troop. Again, just be aware of this thing. But as far as the event is concerned, not the worst thing on the planet. Beyond all of that, you guys are getting access to Raksha Freeblood. So, I can't just type in the word Raksha, of course. So he's kind of cool. So what he's doing is he's exploding the entire board. Well, not the entire board, but he's exploding based on gold. So the more gold that you've acquired throughout the game, the more explosions he's going to do. It's a 5-to-1 boost ratio. So every single time you cast him, if you have no other way of gaining gold, you'll be blowing up 2 extra gems. So the first time you use him, it might be nothing, essentially, just 1 gem. But then next time you use him, it'll be 3, and then the next time you use him, it'll be 5. So, I mean, after, like, the second or third cast, he's extremely useful. He's doing damage to somebody and exploding a lot of the board. He's someone that you would generally try and run in the first slot, just because he does have a little bit of skull reduction. He does gain bonus gold on 4 or 5 matches. So if you can run Raksha Freeblood, I think he's actually one of the better Raksha. Most of the Raksha are pretty underwhelming, but he's actually pretty decent. He just takes a little bit of a wind up. I wouldn't necessarily recommend building like a skull line or a gold lineup per se to try and like get him to blow up the whole board on like turn 1 or something like that. I mean, you can try and mess around with that after the event's over. There's no other like Raksha that are really going to help you with this. However, he's actually a pretty cool troop. So somebody that's in there. And then as far as the Soulforge goes, you guys have some interesting stuff. So in the Soulforge, I will just quickly mention that in the Summoning Stone, in the green Summoning Stone, you guys get access to Taipan. So if you don't have Taipan, he might be worth trying to run for. It's always kind of risky to use the Summoning Stones to get troops, but Taipan is super high value. So if you don't have Taipan, you might want to try and get him. So he's empowered and start with full mana. But he's also converting all browns to reds. So as far as a lot of like red mana heavy kind of lineups, Taipan is kind of a staple. So if you haven't been able to snag Taipan for whatever reason, he is in the green summoning stone. I just thought I'd mention that real quick. Other things that are in there that are really cool. So the Wild Queen's in there. So Wild Queen is kind of just like nutso as far as a troop goes. I mean, her name is Wild, and I think she lives up to the reputation. She's stealing a bunch of attack from somebody and then giving it to your first troop, and then creating a bunch of green and skulls. So this is like 11 skulls and 11 green, basically. So as far as mana generation goes, that's really, really strong. And then like the amount of attack that you just stole, giving it to your one troop up there, just really crazy. So the spell effect is really, really strong. You'll probably almost certainly loop your turn as a result of casting her, and then just do a lot of chaos as a result. The other part that makes her wild is this. So when someone on your team dies, it's a bone storm, which just means skulls are going to be dropping constantly from the top. So, you know, just be aware of this when you're using her. Hopefully you've cast her ability a handful of times, so that way the enemy attack isn't very high, so it doesn't matter if they match skulls. But definitely something to keep in mind if you're using her. This Wild Frenzy thing is kind of whatever. Anything that's got this at the start of every turn is very weak in general, so I would generally not recommend anything like this as being useful. So Wild Queen in general, super high value. I would definitely recommend that you give her a craft. As far as other people that are in there, so World Breaker's in there. So as far as just like a very clean and basic kind of troop, like World Breaker is just that. So he's exploding basically the whole board and then doing a good amount of damage to all. So just right away, this is pretty useful. Like the amount of mana generation you'll get from this and the amount of damage you'll do from this is pretty decent. What's also of note is that he's also gaining 5 to a random skill on every 4 or 5. So this is like a way he can try and build himself up. This feels probably cooler on paper than it is in practice. Since you have a 1 in 4 chance of getting magic pumped as a result of this, you know, it could pump his attack, his defense, his health, or his magic. The only one of these that you really care about is his magic. You're not going to run him in the first slot. His mana cost is super high. So if you do get the magic pumping out of this, this starts to get some pretty crazy stuff. If you run it with a Dragon Guard, you'll get a little extra benefit because you'll be getting 1 magic on every 4 or 5. He's a dragon himself. But in general, World Breaker is a pretty cool troop. I rate him pretty highly, at least personally. I don't know if I'd go out of my way to craft him, however. You probably won't use him as often as you think you would. However, he is very cool, so absolutely someone that's worth looking into. If you do have the diamonds available, I would rate the Wild Queen over him as far as troops that are more useful to craft, though. So Wild Queen over him, but World Breaker is also pretty cool. As far as weapons you guys have craftable, the only one that's in there that's of note would be Mr. Beastly Bow. So Beastly Bow, if you don't have it, is pretty cool. So it's creating a mix of mana based on the number of beast allies that you have. So it's green and yellow. So anytime there's a mixed weapon like this, it's obviously worth crafting as far as I'm concerned. So Beastly Bow's in there as well for you guys. Beyond all of that, I hope you guys are enjoying all the fun patch update stuff you guys got last week, so your game looks a lot more similar to ours these days as far as the other platforms are concerned. But yeah, that is everything that's coming on the Switch side of things. I will quickly mention that if you are running the event, this is probably the team you'd want to be running. So if you have access to Stone Shaker in the last Invasion event, he's actually doing exploding of 3 brown gems and also doing damage to the tower, so this will help you with your loot potential. So I think this lineup is probably the one that would be most beneficial as far as the event's concerned. Lots of mana generation with the first 2 troops, and then tons of tower killing with the bottom 2 troops, and you'll also have looping potential with Stone Shaker. So I would prioritize Stone Shaker's casting over Kardix, but just running this will basically just pop towers with these 2 and then generate mana with these 2. This will be pretty good. So yeah, that is everything that is coming this week from all platforms perspective. So obviously look forward to all the cool stuff that's going on the PC side. Best of luck in your Guild Wars. On the Switch side, best of luck in your Invasion. I will be streaming later this week, so be sure to check that out. I'm handing out redeem codes. I do some fun stuff. It's a pretty fun and chill stream, so make sure to check that out. And then of course, just look forward to new videos throughout the week. So that is everything this week. I am Keylime, signing off. I'll talk to you guys in the next one.